All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Covy Jones, the Wildlife Section Chief, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting to get started. We will have introductions from the Advisory Committee, and then we'll discuss a little bit about the committee's role and the process for tonight. So with that, we'll start with Randy on this end.
Yeah, so Randy Elliott, I'm an elected official from Davis County, Utah, here locally.
Tim Friess, representing the CWMU Association.
Greg Wilding, at large.
Mike Lauder, sportsman rep. Clint McLean, sportsman.
Okay, so those are the members of the committee that are here tonight. This is a committee that is found in rule, and so it has specific duties and obligations, and I'll go through what some of those are. So in the rule that governs CWMUs, it states that this committee shall hear complaints dealing with fair and equitable treatment among hunters on CWMUs, review the operation of the CWMU program, review failure to meet antlerless objectives, hear complaints from adjacent landowners, review changes in acreage totals for CWMUs that are under the standard minimum acreage or parcel configuration requirements, and evaluate the appropriateness of their continued participation in the program, and make advisory recommendations to the director of the Division of Wildlife and the Wildlife Board. I see our coordinator. Oh, one of the committee members can't see. So Chad, thank you for fixing that. It's fine. Eyes open or closed. It's more about hearing. So with that in mind, I want, before we get into what the committee's going to do in process, I'd like Chad to come up to the mic there, if that's okay. This is Chad Wilson. Chad, do you want to introduce yourself, and then I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, Chad Wilson, I'm the Private Lands Public Wildlife Coordinator.
Okay, so Chad, you oversee this program.
Yep.
How long have you been the coordinator over this program?
4.5 years.
Okay.
Do you want days too?
Yeah, this is a really hard program to run. We appreciate Chad and all his hard work and everything he does. We appreciate everybody coming tonight and the effort that you all put in as operators. And this committee specifically can be kind of a hard one to deal with at times. We hear the negative, we hear the bad, we hear the worst, but there's something that's pretty cool that I want to bring up with Chad. Chad, how many public draw permits do we issue on CWMUs about every year?
Yeah, so 1,600.
About 1,600.
Yeah.
So that's 1,600 people, members of the public, get access free and clear to private property, sometimes guided if they choose, sometimes not if they get a lot of choice in there. High quality hunting, and the only price they pay is the cost of the permit. That's pretty freaking cool. Of that, Chad, you've been doing this almost 5 years. Every year, a few complaints. How many did you receive this year? How many official complaints did you receive this year?
We didn't have any this year, so 0. It's pretty awesome.
So I want everybody to take note of that. We had 1,600 people come through a program where they got access to private property and high quality hunting and not one complaint. And I think really, honestly, the operators, the presidents, they deserve a hand. They deserve a thank you. That is impressive. That is super impressive. I had Chad's position once, a long time ago now, it feels. And I've been involved and seen how private lands programs work around the western United States. And it's all over the place. I can tell you, from even a sportsman's perspective and a landowner's perspective, this program is the icon of the West. There are some programs that are really lopsided towards landowners and give nothing to sportsmen. And then you can go one state over and it's really lopsided towards sportsmen, and landowners are not recognized for their contributions. And this one has done a really good job at threading that needle, recognizing the impacts of wildlife on private lands and allowing Utah hunters awesome opportunities. So once again, just before we get into this, super excited. I'm not saying that there aren't issues or problems, but to go a year without an official complaint means that there's a lot of people doing something right. So thank you. Okay, with that, we'll get into the process. So here's what's going to happen tonight. Tonight, we're primarily reviewing. This is one thing that's not actually in the rule, but it is in the code. So that's the state statute that governs the program. It says that we will review any and all public lands that are inside of CWMUs. We don't have any complaints, but the committee will hear and there are certain qualifications that an area or a CWMU has to have to allow that to have that public land inside. And it says that after they're in, we'll review that periodically to make sure it's still meeting the criteria. And so that's what we'll hear tonight. The process that we'll take is that we'll have a presentation from the division, and then the operator of the CWMU, operator or representative of the CWMU, will have 5 minutes to add anything they would like to add. We want to make sure that we have both perspectives. After we have both perspectives, we'll take some time where the committee can ask either the operator or the DWR questions. After the question period, we'll move on to internal discussion and make a motion or a recommendation. And those motions or recommendations are made, again, to the director and to the wildlife board. And that's synonymous. So when we make a motion, that's where the recommendation's going. All right, are there any questions about the process before we move forward? Okay, with that, we'll turn the time over. Chad, will you be giving the presentation tonight? Okay, we'll turn the time over to Chad, and he'll start with the presentation, and we'll start with Riverview Ranch, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going to go through a little bit of a background
Perfect.
of this too. So, and some of this will just reiterate what Covy just said. So one of the purposes of the committee is to review the operations of the CWMU program and to make recommendations to the division director and wildlife board. So this is the operations of the program would be that some of them have public land that we have to review. So tonight we have 9 different CWMUs that are here that they're going to renew this summer that have public land in their CWMU. Before we get too far in it, I wanted to go over a couple of definitions just to make sure we're on the same page when we talk about this. So we'll talk about accessible public lands. So that's lands that can legally be accessed by ground or on borders or potentially even in the interior of the CWMU. Non-accessible public lands are lands that cannot be accessed legally by ground that are in a CWMU. Trade lands, this is one I think that we say this a lot, but I don't know that everybody's really clear about what we talk when we talk about trade lands. So those are private lands that are opened up to public access as compensation for the public land that's inside of a CWMU. And then I threw in here permit calculator too. So we have a calculator that when there's public land in a CWMU, we use this calculator to decide how many, if any, tags, additional public tags will be issued. A couple considerations to keep in mind is in code it does ask that CWMUs are private to the extent practicable. We are required to review these every 5 years. Every CWMU comes for renewal every 3 years, so we just thought that would be the best timing to do that. So every 3 years we do it, but we fit within rule on that. They do all fit, currently they all fit within rule of one of the 3 justifications. There are some impacts of if we do remove public land from some of these CWMUs, there's the possibility of making them so they're under acreage or non-contiguous. So there's 3 different allowances for public land in CWMUs. One is the public land is surrounded by private land or is otherwise publicly inaccessible. 2, the public land is necessary to establish an enforceable and identifiable hunt boundary. Or 3, the inclusion of the public land is necessary to achieve statewide and unit management objectives. That last one, I'm just gonna pause a little bit and talk a little bit more of necessary to achieve management objectives. So we have a handful of these. I think they're all in Box Elder, at least most of them are. And there's a couple CWMUs that have a large amount of public land in those. And those were set up to make it so that we could have wildlife populations in that area. Without the CWMU program, frankly, the landowners just wouldn't tolerate the wildlife out there. So we felt like it was a win-win and created some of these CWMUs that have a decent amount of public land in it, but that would be the reason why, is so we can have a elk population objective rather than it be zero. And then I just wanted to touch on the permit calculator. This is just kind of a sample shot that I took of how it's determined. So you see on that first one is if it's a 90-10 split and we're $10 permits and there's 0.13% public land, it would automatically take 1.3 permits off the top. So when you go to that private permit, when you do the 90-10, it's going off of 8.7 permits because it's already taken off the top. So in a scenario like this one, it spits it out that even though it's a 90-10 split, it would be 8 and 2 because that additional permit is going to the public. And below's one just showing that we do it with all of the different splits, so 85-15. If that number doesn't equal a permit, so in this example, if it didn't equal a permit every year, then I would put in 30 and see if it equals a permit then. And if it did equal a permit with all 3 years being included, that's when we throw one permit for every 3 years on the beginning of that. I hope that makes sense. When we talk numbers and stuff, sometimes it gets confusing. Okay, so
Chad, I think the take home is that anytime public land is included in a CWMU, there's a give back to the public. I mean, that's really, whether that be through permits, through other accessible private lands. So it's not just a gimme. It's compensated for to the public in some form or fashion.
yeah, exactly. So now we'll jump into the management objectives. So Riverview Ranch, Ryan Hawker, the operator and president, is here tonight, and he told me he was super excited to go first. I told him that this one falls under management objectives, so kind of what I was talking about a little bit. This one is probably more for the DWR to justify than the operator. The reason Riverview is here is because of us. You can see that it's largely checkerboarded through the whole thing. They have 13,000, almost 14,000 public acres in the CWMU, and then you can see the south end of that is a bunch of private lands that they open up to the public, 9,500 acres. That south border is a road, so it makes a really clear boundary. So because they take in more public land than private land that they open up, then we still use 13% additional tags in our permit calculator. And mostly I want to focus on that percent because as tags go up and down, I could say an extra permit, like in the last year, it's been an extra elk permit, one antlered one every 3 years, and then one cow tag every year. But as those permits go up and down, it could change those numbers. So yeah, that's what I have on my end. And then I don't know if Ryan, if you have anything or you want to add to that or not.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm really not sure exactly what I'm doing yet. It's actually no longer considered Riverview Ranch. It's Cactus Ranch now. It has been for about 16 months now. My wife and I bought it last November in 2022. And I have to agree that when he refers to this next state over that's not very friendly to the public or the landowners versus the public, that's Idaho. And my wife and I live in Oakley, Idaho. My family ranches in Jordan Valley, Oregon, Woody, California, Oakley, Idaho, and in Grouse Creek, Utah. And so far, Utah's been extremely friendly, and anyway, we're grateful for Utah. They're extremely helpful to the landowners, and hopefully we are too. I think there's been some issues in the past. We're hands-on now, and I hope we didn't have any complaints this year, but we're trying to be friendly to the people, and you can see there's not a lot of land that's checkerboarded like this. If you understand land and country and what areas, you don't see this very often. And we're grateful to be able to let the public out there and hunt and enjoy it. We get compensated, and hopefully they get compensated for being able to use it. And it's actually a good trade. We appreciate it, and hopefully we're adding some water troughs up certain canyons this year, and making it available for the elk to kind of scatter out even a little bit more. The water's a little bit limited in some of those spots, but we're scattering out for the cattle, and the elk will be able to use it also. But we appreciate it and grateful. I'm not sure exactly what you want from me, but anyway, I appreciate it. Any questions for me?
Any questions from the committee for Chad? Or, I'm sorry, again, Cactus Ranch, but what is your name again?
Ryan Hawker.
Any questions for Mr. Hawker?
Yeah.
I don't have questions, but maybe comments.
Okay,
We get to do that?
yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead and stay up there, Ryan, for a second. Hey, thank you. Looking forward to a great positive relationship between ourselves and yourself. And this is a great program, and I think you're going to have good experiences with it. And understand that you're pretty excited to get into this program. In talking to Chad, you're going to learn quite a bit about some of the responsibilities as an operator, and it's certainly a unique program in the West. But you know, I assure you that it's a good program, and if you take it seriously, you're going to see a good, long-term, positive situation there for the hunting on your property. So thank you, and I hope you stay committed to that. Please come to our meetings. You know, please get your continuing education hours, and be involved in the program, and I think that you'll be a great partner for us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else that anybody would like to say on this one?
Chad, can you clarify, are these trade lands equal? I mean, I know the public's always concerned about that, and it seems to come up that.
Yeah, so acreage, I mean, you can see, like, it's, the road is the reason why it was decided. And Daniel can maybe go into a little bit more of this, but, yeah, they're all right there in the same area. It's obviously not the same number, and that's why they give a little bit, or when there's enough tags, they have been giving an extra public tag. So I feel like it's a fair trade. I don't know if Daniel wants to add anything to it.
I'm Daniel Slee, the box elder biologist. So the boundary is actually a creek, Tom's Cabin Creek. Pretty physical boundary to let people know where they're going. One possibly confusing thing for the public is a county road does cut up through the lower boundary into the CWMU. This year we did have to deal with the operator, just educating a little bit on how to properly post signage and stuff. But as far as the habitat goes, it's pretty equal and equitable. It's the same mountain range. There's the elk go back and forth. On the south end of the trade lands, the hatch stuff that's not orange and highlighted in red is other trade lands provided by Double Cone, and they have one of those whole sections that I think is that largest, the full section north on theirs is agricultural fields, alfalfa, and typically there's a herd of elk that spends the night in that alfalfa field and then goes up into the Cactus Ranch trade lands in the day. So having the trade lands there really allows people to go try to harvest those animals. And typically every few years, they get a pretty good bull off the trade lands, either Double Cones or Cactus Ranches. So
Do you care if I add something real quick? Just we've gone through a CWMU rule committee that we've wrapped up. I just want to just inform you that through that I can't imagine it not passing through the Wildlife Board, but we're going to have signs posting trade lands. As Daniel kind of brought it up, that there's some confusion there has been in years past, that we're going to actually have physical signs where it's posted that they're trade lands and they're open. Our maps have been greatly updated. We did have to work through a little bit of something through that one this year, but yeah, just so you know, on these trade lands, we're.
So are those signs going to be available for us, or are we going to do that if landowners post those, or is the DNR? So just because this is a live recorded meeting, and I think it's a valid question, I'm going to repeat it, and then we'll let Chad answer. Chad brought up the fact that we're working through a sign, and the question from the audience was, will those be posted by the DWR or by the landowner?
Yeah, and I believe it's not finalized yet, but I believe the intent is for the landowner to post those. And it should be, we're working towards a sign that would be both a no trespassing and a trade land sign, so you don't have to double post any of that land.
There was a lot of discussion about color. We spent as much time talking about the color of the sign and what it would read so that people weren't repelled from it, thinking it was a no trespassing sign, but identified the trade lands as those that could be hunted by the public.
Yeah, and I think we're finalizing that, so hopefully we get a good one.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, with that, we'll look for a motion.
Make the motion that we accept the public lands within the confines of the CWMU as presented.
Second.
Okay, so that's a motion by Mike and a second by Greg. All right, call to a vote.
Randy Elliott, aye.
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 Okay, that's all ayes. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, so in this category, we just have one. This is public land that's accessible, has some accessible and some that's inaccessible. This is West Willow Creek. So you can kind of see on the map there of what the accessible public land is and what's not. It's 3,200 public acres. So on this one, the public benefit, there isn't any trade lands on this one. Public benefit is 11.8% tags. So traditionally that's been 2 extra deer tags each year. You can see too, if the public was taken out of this one, it would make it so it's a little bit disjointed, the stuff on the top there. It would probably put it in, and Clay, the operator, can probably speak to this a little bit more, but might make it so it's not an elk CWMU with contiguous acres on the south end, so it could affect this CWMU. I'll let Clay talk.
Yeah, I'm Clay Batty, the operator for West Willow Creek Ranch, CWMU. First of all, I got to know a couple of you by working on the committee that was reviewing the rule. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how vital this board is, or this committee is, to the success of the CWMU program. So first of all, thank you for your willingness to serve and to be here tonight. Yeah, originally the private land or the public land was included into the CWMU to create a enforceable and non-contiguous boundary for the whole ranch. With me here tonight is Clint Sampson, that is the biologist over our area. And I'm not sure if he was able to get on, but Ray Windsor, who is the conservation officer for the area, was on too. If you have any questions, they're more than happy to fill those. But they also believe that it's necessary for the continuous boundary to create a identifiable boundary for the land, public land to be included. One comment, or a couple comments I wanted to make about the 2 extra deer tags. I think that's vital to know that we are in winter rangeland. So if you were to show up on my ranch in, say, October 15th, you'd be lucky to find a deer. Even though our tags say we can start hunting September 11th through November 10th, we typically don't start till about October 20th. The deer, and it's completely dependent on weather. When the deer start moving in, they move in fast and thick, but most of our hunting has taken place that last week of October into the 10th of November. So we believe that those 2 extra deer tags going to the public, they have a greater opportunity to hunt the whole ranch as a whole. Our public hunters usually hunt the 1st through the 5th of November, so they have a greater opportunity to hunt than they normally would if it was part of the Book Cliffs unit. There just isn't the deer there during the hunt. So, yeah, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
I have a couple questions. What's the total acreage?
So it's not broke out real well here, but Mustang Fuel Corporation owns about 19,200. We have another private landowner that's with us that has about a little over 4,300, and then 3,200 with the public land. So we're just shy of 27,000 acres. 26,700, somewhere around there. I can't.
This is elk and deer.
It is elk and deer. So yes, the stuff that is on the north end there would not come out to 10,000 acres on its own. It's shy of that. And that's primarily where we have killed our elk. It's also important to note, I think, that the first 3 years that we were at CWMU, we actually didn't even take elk tags. We've been trying really hard to help increase the elk population in the area. The first 3 years, we didn't hunt any. The second 3 years, we had 1 and 1, 1 public, 1 private. Currently, we're doing two private, 1 public. But it's been through water wells and vegetation projects and the removal of unwanted livestock that we've been able to really help increase our elk herds there.
So I assume no cow elk tags yet out there?
No, in fact, I talked to my biologist after going through that meeting and seeing the cry on cow elk. I called him and said, do we need to shoot cow elk? Because I'm more than happy to. And he said, no, we're still trying to build the herd in the Book Cliffs. So.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Chad, again, I just want to make sure that I understood this correctly. That the purpose of, so in code, it states the reasons why there can be public land included in CWMU. And the purpose that this is included is for a more definable boundary. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Clint, yeah, I can see that the biologist has something to say. And anytime Clint wants to talk, we let him.
Clint Sampson, I'm the biologist in the Book Cliffs. Just a couple notes here that I took down before the meeting. First of all, like Clay said, he's done wonders for this west side of the Book Cliffs. I don't know if many of you have spent much time in this country, but it's low, kind of salt desert shrub type savanna type habitat. It's one of the neatest places to come in November to see mule deer in Utah. It will blow your mind that there are deer, that just, I swear they have tunnels out there. Cause I mean, the sagebrush, mostly black sage, it's only like a foot tall maybe. And there's just deer popping up, everywhere out there. And a significant amount of elk that we've seen increase and use this area. Clay's honest, willing to help. He's put in several guzzlers and done a lot of spring developments and vegetation habitat projects out there. So it's really helped that way. My background when I first started out there in the Book Cliffs was in law enforcement, and I spoke with Ray Windsor, our game warden out there currently, and trying to enforce this kind of a boundary, if the public land was taken out of that, would just be a nightmare. Like if that was all I had to do, it would still be pretty overwhelming. And Clay's made leaps and bounds working with the Ute tribe you see on that far west side, that other pink shaded area, that's the Ute tribe. And constant, education and battles there, trying to remind the tribe that they don't own what he owns. And he's really willing to go the extra mile to keep up on his signage and everything like that we ask him to do. Always going the extra mile that way. But the biggest thing to remember is there's public hunters on that side and on the other side. They're both limited entry areas, and they're both public hunters on both sides of the fence. And so it's not like it's limited entry on one side and general season on the other, and the public's feeling cheated, like sportsmen are just, salivating, looking at these bucks that they don't have access to. Anybody that wants to can put in for that public draw permit on the CWMU, and it really helps with point creep as well in the Book Cliffs. Kind of forces people's hands to hunt a different area and spreads that out too. Gives us great opportunity out there, but in general, there's no definable geographical boundary that you could draw around those public pieces to really separate it out that we've been able to find. And including them in it is definitely worth, I think, the trouble of taking it out. It would be really, really hard to enforce, and to me, it just makes sense. But yeah, sorry about that. Anyway. And I'm not saying this because Clay's bigger than me and can tear my arms off and beat me with them. No, but yeah, thank you.
No, we appreciate you both coming out. All right, any discussion? Or do we feel like we understand the issue? Okay, with that, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the West Willow Creek CWMU with the included public lands for the reasons stated.
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion by Greg and a race to the second.
I think I want him.
You won?
Yeah, I want.
Okay. Tie goes to Clint. So, motion second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. It's unanimous. All right, Chad, you're back up again. Chad, you're doing really well. Don't mess this up.
Thank you. I don't hear that very often, so.
Thanks, Chad.
This one is probably a little more complicated. Maybe we'll have to figure out how we want to work through this one, because this one is public land that's accessible, and it has trade lands too. Do we want to do these one at a time, or do you want me to present all? There's 4 of them.
It's probably easier to make motions on one at a time. So let's do them one at a time. We'll go through the entire process, make a motion, and move on to the next one.
Okay.
That way we evaluate them all independently.
Okay. Let's start with Causey Springs then. So this is one where it is. It actually has some accessible public land and some that's not accessible. So you can kind of see where that is on there. The trade lands just onto the right side of the map there. So they take in 537 public acres, and then they give access to 488 acres of trade land. So that's 0.53% that we put into our calculator. Currently, that doesn't add up to any additional tags throughout the 3 years. So it's just close enough to an even swap. You can see that some of that private stuff, I believe that border there where the trade lands are is a trail. So it gives them good access to that public land there as well. I don't know if it makes sense now to let the biologist speak a little bit more to it, and then and then maybe turn it, Paul Anderson, the operator, is online, at least.
Yeah,
he's going
if
to be.
there's, let's let the biologist speak a little bit, because if I remember correctly, and I don't want to speak to, but if I remember correctly, the trail is really advantageous to public hunters on this one. So if you could explain that, and then we'll give the operator some time.
Jayla Walden, Morgan South Ridge District Bio. So this one's really important to have here because those canyons are super steep, and having that trail access across the ridgeline makes all of that forest up in the upper right-hand corner accessible to the public, that otherwise either we have trespass issues or it becomes inaccessible to the public. So that's really what it comes down to. And then Paul is also online, so he can speak as well.
Yeah,
Paul-
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, like Gila said, I mean, it's that comes down off of Monty, off of Bluebell Springs, and also through Dry Bread, and that red line is basically the ridge line. And so you can see on that first little orange section to the north, they would have to go to the bottom of the canyon and come back up just to access that little hook piece that's in there. So that's really the only trade land, is the little hook piece. And there's a little segment further down to the south that's in there. There's really no hunting there anyways. And we've never killed animals on either of those two pieces along the eastern border. So it's helped us out a lot because we haven't had the trespassing problem with people coming down the trail and continuing on to try and hunt a small piece of property that's really not good to hunt anyways. So, but, that also gave the public access to a pond that's actually in the orange zone there as well, that previously they wouldn't have had access to.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions for the operator or for the division?
I have a question for Jayla.
Mhm.
How many acres does that open up of forest that you think? Is it
There's
rough ballpark?
other access points, but it just depends on where people are coming in. But I mean, that's all of Monty, so I don't know the exact acreage. It's huge, but there's other access points. That's just, some of those canyons hold a lot of animals because they get pushed.
Yeah, that orange piece in particular actually holds quite a few animals. We get a lot migrating through there into our piece, both moose and elk especially. So.
Okay, just again to clarify for the committee and for the public that are listening, as I understand correctly, and I want you to correct me if I'm not, but the reason that this would qualify in code is because this provides a really good defensible boundary, right? That's the rationale in code. In addition to that, what we're getting here is access to other public lands, which would otherwise be very difficult to access, and some trade land that is huntable land as well. And the one question that the advisory committee didn't ask that I'll ask you, Jayla, is this trade land, is it comparable, I guess, to that small J hook that's in there as far as what it is?
It's probably a little bit better, in all honesty.
Oh, don't say that. No, I'm just kidding.
But it's
He's
true,
right, though.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right, any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll look for, or any discussion on the property. Not a very talkative group tonight. We'll look for a
The
motion.
only discussion I've got is this is the reason we have this in the rule. I think it's great.
I like it too.
I've actually hunted up there, and it is pretty awesome.
It's worth it just for the trail.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So I like it. I was actually prepared to make a motion.
Sounds good.
I'll make the motion that we accept Causey Springs CWMU as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Randy. We're going to say he beat you this time, Greg. And we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, seeing that, the recommendation is that we pass this on with a favorable recommendation to the director and the wildlife board.
Okay.
Okay, next one up is George Creek. So This one, once again, you can see that there's a chunk of BLM that separates the two pieces, and then you see what looks like it's higher in elevation. The trade lands that are given up, so it's 783 public acres that are included in the CWMU, and they open up 800 acres of trade lands. So on this one, we don't use a permit calculator. They're giving up more private land than what they include with public. So, and you can see on this one too that if that public land was taken out, then there'd be a chunk over there that wouldn't be in the CWMU. I don't know how that would affect it, if it would. I don't think it would make it go under acreage, but yeah, I don't know for sure. Then Daniel, do you have anything you want to add to that?
This one's pretty straightforward. In this case, like similar to Jayla's, the trade lands in this case is pretty far superior than the public land that's being traded. So that section of public land within the CWMU is just flat valley bottom with sagebrush that's like this tall. I mean, they have some agricultural operations around there, so deer do pass through it. But the section of land that they open up is higher in elevation, has some good water pretty close to it. And I actually was going to hunt that this year, but I shot a little 3-point before I got there. So, yeah.
Okay, with Chad, you have something to add too?
I was just going to say it's Travis Spencer's here with the.
Okay, would the operator like to add anything there? Okay, he feels like everything's been covered. With that, we'll bring it back to the committee and see if we have any questions. Again, Chad, the reason to include this, can you just state the reason to include this again?
Yeah, this one's for an enforceable boundary.
Enforceable boundary? Okay. Any other questions? Seems like people like it when they're getting a better trade. So. Okay. Okay, with that, no questions, any committee discussion? And then we'll look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we accept the George Creek CWMU as presented.
I'll second.
A motion by Mike and a second by Tim, and we'll take a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mike. That's our biologist, Dave Smedley, taking notes. Keep up, Dave. All right. All right, so that motion passes. Really quickly, I do want to say, I know this feels like a lot of work, and one of the criticisms in the program, and I'm kind of breaking here in the middle of the meeting, I'm sorry for that, but I'm still going to do it. They gave me a mic, and I'm going to do it. So one of the criticisms of the program is that, well, at times it incorporates, public land. It's only for the purpose of a hunt unit. It doesn't include the public land for anything else. It's just for the purposes of assigning a big game permit in this case. But I think the thing that we get to highlight here, I understand this is a rigorous process and it may seem a little cumbersome, but the thing we get to highlight here is there are a lot of benefits that come with a little bit of inclusion of public land sometimes. And there is rationale behind it every time, and the benefits of access and better private land to hunt on. And I love that we are able to highlight that. So with that, Chad, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one.
Okay, yeah, the next one's Johnson Mountain Ranch. This one too is for an enforceable boundary. I'll state that now so Covey doesn't have to ask me later. Here they're trading 91 acres, including 91 acres of public in the CWMU and trading 91 acres. That road there is I-70. So this has been, a lot of this one is for law enforcement too. You had people shooting across I-70 up in that top right-hand area. So that's really the reason for it, is a public safety thing as well. But it makes, I-70 is a really good boundary there. Yeah, I don't know if Vance has anything else he wants to add. And The operator on this one's not here, so
So the other reason would then be, when you say it's for our law enforcement, it's for us to meet management objectives as well, which is a public safety issue. And I'm saying that just to make sure that we get it on the public record, the exact reason.
Sure. Yeah, so this was brought forth at request of both the landowner and our law enforcement section. People shooting and wasting animals because they couldn't get to them in those little corners. The trade lands offered are far superior, in big game numbers. It's got good cover, good hiding cover and open for hunting. It's fairly close to a Forest Service road, so this is a really good trade for the public, and it also makes everything safer for the public.
Any questions?
I have just one. Is that boundary around that trade lands, is that enforceable? Is that part of this, or is it?
Yeah. There's a fence along that, and I think we'll need to make sure it's posted as open to the public. So,
Great.
Yep.
Seeing no further questions and any committee discussion? And we'll look for a motion.
I move that we approve the Johnson Mountain Ranch with the included 91 acres of public land for the reasons stated herein.
All right, motion by Mr. Wilding.
I'll second it.
Who got that second?
They did.
Okay, Clint. And we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
okay, next one's Rabbit Creek. This one too, the operator wasn't able to come tonight, but you see on this one, this is for an enforceable boundary as well. And you can see the public land that's inside the CWMU and the trade land down there in the bottom. That trade land makes it so people can access that public land up there. So even though they have 721 public acres inside the CWMU and the trade land's 240 acres, that 240 acres makes it so there's access to a lot more public land that otherwise would be inaccessible. And for those reasons, we don't do a permit calculator on this one either. We just, with that additional opening up of the acres, we call it that it's comparable. You want to add anything to that, Daniel? Or Sam, sorry. Daniel, you have like all of them, so I always just ask you.
Yeah, my name's Sam Robertson. I'm the Cache and Ogden District Bio. Clint was sad he couldn't make it tonight, but I was talking to him last night, and he was still trying to move snow for his cows to have calves, so he had a lot of work ahead of him. But Clint's been great to work with. He's been really concerned about our pronghorn herd up there. This is what his CWMU is for, is pronghorn. He gets 3 permits. 2 in the last year. He gets 3, but he didn't even fill his permit last year because he was concerned about the pronghorn, and they ended up filling the state permit. But Clint's been great to work with, and it is a good piece that it opens up, that 2,200 acres of public land. And the piece that he traded is a good piece too. It has a spring on it when we have water, and it's a good piece for the pronghorn as well.
Any questions?
Sam, is that a road on that side?
What side?
Is there a road that goes up? Is that the east boundary? The side towards you?
The fence line up this side?
Yeah. So it's a fence. There's no road there. I just was curious about the piece of Sitla land that's on the corner on the outside edge.
Right here?
Yeah, the state trust land.
More a fence line there. There's an old fence line.
Okay. Any other questions? Committee discussion? All right, let's look for a motion.
I'll motion that we approve the Rabbit Creek CWMU as proposed.
Second.
Motion by Tim and a second by Randy. We'll call it to vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Looks like all in favor, no opposed, so it's unanimous.
Okay, this next one has public land that is accessible, but there's not trade lands on this one. So this will be Junction Valley. You can see, I can kind of see from this angle, but the top left-hand corner is that public land that's included in it. So it's 350 acres of public land that's in it. We put 1.04% into the permit calculator. That makes it so that there's an additional dare tag given to the public every 3 years. And then I'll let, this time, Daniel come and talk to it.
This one is the way it is because it's an enforceable boundary. So I'll point to it really quick. That's the public land that's being included in the CWMU. It's on the top of it's on the downhill side from a pretty steep ridge line. So anything over that ridge line is the CWMU. If somebody were to go down there, there's no way to visually see what property they were on. It's pretty thick aspen vegetation there. And if they shot anything there, it would most likely die on the private land. It's a pretty large CWMU with a very small amount of public land we take into it. Right now, the permit calculator does say one additional tag every 3 years. But Gary, the operator, he's the operator, was telling me that they might be including more private land in the CWMU, which would make it so the calculator would not give an extra public tag, but Gary said they'd never take that extra public tag away because they'd recognize taking public land within their boundaries will require them to give that tag up. To give the public that tag. So no matter how much more this one grows, we'll always have that additional public tag.
All right, would the operator like to say anything? Okay, Mr. Webb is here to represent the CWMU and has nothing to say but willing to answer questions. So we'll go to that portion. Any questions for the DWR or the operator?
I think it's admirable that they acknowledge the public land within the confines of the CWMU and are willing to honor the one permit to the public. I think that's cool, no matter how big the CWMU gets. I think that warrants being mentioned again, so just wanted to take that opportunity to do that.
Any discussion on this one?
I just have a comment. I think, obviously it could be included or it could be excluded, but I think if 15 people went and hunted this 350 acres, it's not very huntable anyway. And I think to give an extra tag is a huge give. So I'd support it as is.
Okay, with that, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we accept the Junction Valley CWMU as presented.
Motion by Mike,
Second.
second by Greg. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed if there be any? Hearing none. It's unanimous.
I didn't know if I should knock on wood or before I say this, but I'm not used to my meetings. Don't say it. Okay.
Don't say it, Chad.
Just leave that thought out there. I didn't finish it. So one last category, 2 more CWMUs in the category of they have public land and they're not accessible. So this first one, West Hills, and TJ is here representing West Hills. You can see that there's some sitla on the far south end. It's surrounded completely by private, so it's been included in the CWMU. So 640 acres. We use 3.45% in the calculator, and it's equated to an extra public tag every year. I don't know if Daniel doesn't have anything to say on this one either. So maybe TJ, you have. Come on. Okay.
So Yeah, the operator given the chance to speak, nothing to say to this. If you do want to talk, you have to go to the mic. That's the rule. Okay. All right. With that, does anybody here have any questions for the division or the operator?
My only comment is similar to what Mike had to say on the previous application, and that is that, again, the public are getting a pretty good benefit by the inclusion of that inaccessible private land or public land. So thanks for doing that, and continue to keep taking care of those public hunters. Appreciate that.
I have a question for the operator. Is there an enforceable boundary? And my other question is who's the other landowner? Do they not care that they have access? I guess that would be my question.
Yeah, so I'm not, there's a few different landowners, and they do have access. What was your other question? Is the mic not on?
It's directional, so you have to talk into it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so there is other landowners that have access. Yeah, I mean, it's locked gates all the way around it. There is fence all the way around it.
Have you guys historically hunted this piece, or is this something that's been added recently?
It's been added recently, to my knowledge. I've only been with them for 3 years, so the 3 years I've been there. Last year, I think it was the first year we hunted it.
Can I ask you a question, Daniel? Do you know of the other landowners around here? I think this can create a conflict, possibly, right, with other landowners, and that's part of cooperating. So I'm just curious about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know any of the other landowners. I was just looking on Onyx. There's probably 3 different ones. Yeah, I really don't. I've never had any contact with them at all. It does abut against land that's owned by the county, that's a gravel pit. So it kind of looks like there might be accessible land, but you can't. I had a GPS collared deer die on this parcel, and they wouldn't let me enter that county land either. So there is at least from what I saw, there is a fence all the way around it too. So I really can't speak to the landowners, but there is an enforceable boundary. So.
If I can jump in, I have had some, and I can't remember their names, but there has been some landowners around there that have expressed some concern over that parcel. And I don't know if it's the parcel as much or just the other land around it. I hesitate a little bit bringing this up because I don't know all the specifics. Besides that, I had a landowner say that, complain that he got kicked off his own private land there. I think it got resolved. I talked to both parties. There has been a little bit of contention, and I think, to your point, is I think that we've talked about this before. If you have a piece of public land here that it is up against the CWMU, but it's also surrounded by other private lands. Who gets the access to it? And I don't know that I have all the answers to that. I know if it's in the CWMU that there is however many public hunters have access to it, where if it's not in the CWMU, you don't know who potentially could have access, if they would allow public people to come in, and if there was more access or not. But yeah, just to give you a little bit of my background of what I've had on that one.
If it's not included, is there still a definable boundary right there on the other red line?
Yeah, and I think the justification for I don't know what the boundary is on this one, but I think the justification is that it's not accessible to the public at large. So those other private landowners could access it. So I guess if you consider them public at large, but it's not like anybody could just go there without written permission, I guess. So I think that's justification for it being in, is that it's not accessible.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that there's probably warrants a little committee discussion on this one. Let's, obviously, Tim, you have some interest in this. Why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, that helps me, and I appreciate what Chad just said about the public at large having access. I would, though, just tell the operator that if there does arise conflict with the other neighbors, that, we need to make sure that's resolved and maybe it gets pulled out. But I think the public benefit, the general broader public, obviously these private landowners have something to do on their ground and hunt, I'm sure, but anyway, just something to be mindful of.
How many total state hunters get tags each year? With the extra one as well?
I believe traditionally they've got a total of 10 tags, so it'd be 8 and 2 instead of 9 and 1, so one additional one.
It seems like we'd be doing a good thing to approve this on account of the additional public tags and the continuous ongoing public access to hunt that property, wherein, the state has a say in it through the CWMU program. Whereas without it, then maybe a landowner or two can restrict public access to it, keep it to himself to do whatever they want up there. That doesn't seem terribly fair, but I'm spitballing right here, just thinking about it, and want to hear what the rest of you guys think.
As a non-voting member of the committee, I'm going to comment. And my comment is not telling the committee what to do, because I'm not going to do that. But what I would say is that a few of the committee members had questions tonight that I don't feel like were answered. And understanding the use in the area of the neighbors is probably a good thing to have prepared in the future if this comes up again. And understanding that relationship and their relationship with the land and how they hunt their land is probably a good idea to come with that information. That's what I'll say.
I'll comment on that. I apologize for not having that information. Honestly, I've helped with John, and he's the operator. But I didn't come prepared for those questions. I do know that there's multiple landowners with keys to that property to get through. I don't know who they are, but I know that they do have access. But yeah.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion on this one? If there's no further discussion, we'll look for a motion.
We're going to look at this again in 3 years, right, with the public land being inside it. So I'm going to make the motion that we approve it as presented, the West Hills CWMU as presented, and then again, if something arises to the point where it becomes contentious, we can look at it again in 3 years. So my motion would be to pass.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion to pass is presented with a second. Was that you, by Tim? And we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous as well. All right, Chad, do you have anything else for us?
I have one more.
Oh, you do?
Yep. So, Whites Valley, Stu's here, Stu Peterson with Whites Valley, the operator. So this one, once again, it's it's not accessible to the public. It's 320 acres, so we put a 2.72% into the permit calculator, and it comes out to just a deer permit every 3 years. Similar to the other one, you can see that a different private landowner would have access to that land potentially if it wasn't in the CWMU. And then, Daniel, you have anything you want to add?
Was it you I was talking to that said your neighbor was hunting that? Yeah, can you come talk about that?
Just for the, will you state who you are and do you represent the CWMU?
Stuart Peterson, Whites Valley CWMU operator.
Okay, thank you.
What he's referencing, we had a landowner that's just, I think, recently purchased that piece that borders us. He's the only, like, I think it's at both ends of his property is where that starts and stops. And this last year, he was out there, leaned over the fence, cranking shots off up into the BLM property that's there. And we approached, well, he actually came over and approached us because he thought we were trespassing up through his property, which we've had access for over 60 years to our property. And anyway, we confronted him, and he wasn't very happy about it because he thought when he bought that gave him all that access up there when he hadn't looked at his maps. So that's kind of what happened there. He didn't hit the animal. We confirmed it, and he reluctantly left. But so that was a little bit of an issue. And I guess the, Tim said it too, at large it benefits the public because if they were to give this piece and take it out of the CWMU, then that one landowner and him only gets, is the one that benefits from that property.
Hey, Stuart, what's the boundary like there? Is that an old fence or what?
Yeah, so just real quick, I'll just point. So yeah, this is our fence line. There's a distinguished fence here. My father-in-law runs sheep, and so it's well fenced and maintained. And it just cuts straight through here. There's a fence all the way around that. Up here, there's no boundary. There's no fence lines, points, corners. And so that could, I don't know where he was even shooting. If he was shooting up above, we never did see what he was at. I just don't know how, it just seems like it could create something that would be very difficult for us to keep an eye on and monitor.
Have you guys historically grazed that? Has that just been part of your grazing operation as well?
It is. Yep. So other than that, I don't really have anything other than that to add. It's a good distinguished fence line, property line there. And if you do take it out, like I said, one person benefits rather than the state getting a tag, through the program and giving others opportunity. So,
Stuart, and we have a neighboring CWMU, so I'm very familiar. But is this the piece that you've given the extra tag for all these years? Mm-hmm. So this is the piece. And how long have you had this in the CWMU, you think?
Oh, the CWMU's been in probably since it started, I'm guessing. I've just taken it over maybe the last 6-7 years that I've ran it. So, okay. And we started giving the extra tag when I started taking it over. So, but if there's any other questions,
any other questions from the committee? Any comments or discussion?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing. Have a quick discussion about this. I've never been a huge fan of private landowners restricting hunting on private land or on public land just to themselves. And in every case where we have public land on a CWMU, we are guaranteeing that there will be public hunters that can utilize that property on a regular basis. There's certainly some discussion about how many can hunt, but in every case they can, and the public gets access to that property, and the landowner cannot tell them whether or not they can hunt. They can get a tag and they can hunt it. And so I just think we benefit the public at large by doing this. It's one of the reasons we've got this program.
Any more discussion on this one? Make sure it's signed well. And with that, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the Whites Valley CWMU with the included 320 acres of public land and all the other conditions stated.
Motion by Greg,
I'll second.
second by Tim. Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Opposed? It passes unanimous. All right, well, thank you, Chad. Is there anything else that you have for us tonight you need to make the committee aware of?
No, that's all we had for the agenda. I guess I would just say that I mentioned it earlier, CWMU rule. There was a CWMU rule advisory committee that we had that there's going to be some proposed changes for CWMUs in the June board, and we didn't hear, we probably could have heard a lot of other things, and the answers to all of them probably would have been, let's wait and see what the rule looks like. So we purposefully didn't hear a lot of things because I think the rule is going to address them. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody coming. Can I say it now? Like this one was felt too easy? Okay.
All right, with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. All right, let's adjourn. Thanks, everybody.